and there is only not one checkpoint, there are many checkpoints, and most of the times these checkpoints are closed, so people cannot go to their work. Sometimes students cannot go to their universities. People sometimes cannot travel. Sick people sometimes are not allowed to go to hospitals. So this makes the life of civilians more difficult. So these checkpoints are established by the Israelis under the pretext of security. But I don't think that this type of restrictions of movement will bring security to the Israelis. It will create more frustrations, and it will create more violence, and there will be less security for the Israelis. I am coming here as part of the Fulbright Visiting Specialist Program. The main aim of the program is to create more understanding of the Middle East in the United States. It seems that the United States need to understand better the Arab culture, the Arab way of thinking, because there are strong relations and common interests between the United States and the Middle East. And in order to keep these relations as normal and as good as much it should be, there should be awareness among the American public of the culture of the countries of the Middle East. Being a citizen of a superpower like the United States imposes on every citizen an obligation, and this obligation is to being aware of what's going on around in the world, how the American government is creating relations with the different countries, because at the end it is the tax money which is collected from the normal American citizen that is spent all over the world. And it seems it's not enough for an American to say just I don't know what's going on and I have nothing to do with it. Even if he does not know what's going on, he's responsible, and he has a responsibility of some of the things that are going around in the world, whether in the Holy Land, in Palestine or in Israel, whether in Iraq or any other country. The problem that we have here in the United States, that the public don't look to the roots of the problem, to the causes of problems, don't know about the injustices which are causing this violence. So we just look to the violence and say violence is bad and we have to fight violence. But if you want to fight violence, you have to eliminate first the causes and the injustices which led to this violence. Very simply. And in order to do that, you have to be aware what's going on. Because if you are not aware and you don't know, then you will be like a blind person. If we have less awareness, we will become more fundamental, more extremist. The core problem that the Arab world is suffering from now, and since many decades, is the Palestine problem, or the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This is the core conflict, not only in the Middle East, but maybe all over the world. So the violence now in the Middle East is a result of the suffering of the Palestinian people who is living under occupation since many years. After the Six-Day War, as you know, Israel occupied the West Bank and East Jerusalem, which was under Jordanian control. Israel also occupied Gaza, which was under the rule of Egypt. So we have now almost 3.7 Palestinians under Israeli occupation, and they are living under occupation since more than 30 years. And this should not continue, and their problem should be solved. And Israel cannot keep them forever, because if she keeps 3.7 million Palestinians in Gaza and in the West Bank, plus the 20% of the Palestinians who are living inside Israel, this means that half of the Israeli state will be Palestinian. So if you want to create a Jewish state in Israel, you should separate yourself from the Palestinian. So the creation of a Palestinian state will be a solution for the Israeli problem in the Middle East. It's not only a Palestinian problem, it is also an Israeli problem. It's up to the Israelis themselves to decide if they want to have an Israeli state, a lay state, or a Jewish state. But the tendency now that the Israelis would like to live together in a Jewish state. So it's up to them to decide, not up to the Palestinians. We just would like to be good neighbors of the state of Israel, to have good relations with them, because without having good relations, economic relations, human and friendship relations, there will be no peace in the area. And if the conflict will continue in this way, there will be no development in the West Bank. And in order to have peace, Israel should make peace with the Palestinians. And after making peace with the Palestinians, Israel will be able to make peace with all the Arab countries. And if Israel is surrounded with friendly state, it will live in peace. And the Israelis should help the Palestinians to start negotiating with them, because the Israelis have all the keys in their hand. They are the stronger party, and the stronger party should have the initiative. The Palestinians are frustrated, and small groups, sometimes which are not the control of the Palestinian Authority, use violence that will harm not only the Israelis but also the Palestinians. Yes, when I talk to a new public like the American public about the question of the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians, the background that the majority of the people that I met have about the conflict is that the Palestinians are fighting Israel, and Israel is fighting for its existence. In fact, the question is not as this. The question is that Israel occupied in 1967 Palestinian territory, and there are almost 4 million Palestinians are living under occupation. They have less freedom every year, and they cannot move from one place to another inside the West Bank. The Israelis are building more settlements in their territory, and Palestinians are losing hope that they will become independent one day, so they become more frustrated, and this is the cause of the enmity that exists between the two parties. Now, if you eliminate that cause, which is the building of settlements in the Palestinian territory, the restrictions on the movement of the Palestinians, the curfews, the closures, the checkpoints, because water is an important element where the two parties depend on each other. Israel needs some of the water of the West Bank, and the Palestinian maybe needs some of the technology that the Israelis have. And we will be good neighbors, and we will cooperate together. And the West Bank and the Palestinian state also can help to create better relations between Israel and the Arab world. Ten years ago, you could travel from, or even 15 years ago, you could travel from Bethlehem to Jerusalem in 20 minutes. Today, you need 3 hours in order to travel from Bethlehem to Ramallah, for example. Because, first of all, Jerusalem itself is closed for the Palestinian, and as you know, there are more than 300,000 or more Palestinians living in East Jerusalem. And Palestinians are allowed to drive in other roads around Jerusalem and to face many Israeli checkpoints and to wait sometimes 1 hour or 2 hours to pass the checkpoint. And there is only not one checkpoint, there are many checkpoints. And most of the times, these checkpoints are closed. So people cannot go to their work. Sometimes students cannot go to their universities. People sometimes cannot travel. Sick people sometimes are not allowed to go to hospitals. So this makes the life of civilians more difficult. So these checkpoints are established by the Israelis under the pretext of security. But I don't think that this type of restrictions of movement will bring security to the Israelis. It will create more frustrations, and it will create more violence, and there will be less security for the Israelis. The solution is not to build checkpoints or walls, but to eliminate these checkpoints and sit on the table and study with the Palestinians the ways in order to make peace. When I came to the United States, there was total closure in the West Bank, and I could not pass the checkpoints, because if I go to the checkpoint, I will be returned back by the Israeli army. So I was obliged to go over the mountain in order to pass the checkpoint and to take another car in order to travel to here. And while I was walking over the mountains, I realized how difficult it was for our students to come to the university every day. Sometimes I feel angry when I enter the class and see 10, 15 students from 25 or 30 absent, because they come from Hebron, they come from Jerusalem, they come from many places. And when they come late, 1 hour, 2 hours, they say, we were not able to pass the checkpoint, or the checkpoint is closed, and we have to walk over the mountains. So I understood the difficulties that my students are facing. If a student from Hebron, which is only 20 minutes south of Bethlehem, 27 kilometers, and it needs only 20 minutes drive to reach Bethlehem, If he's living there and there are 5-6 checkpoints on the road and they are closed, the student has to wake up at 4 and maybe to walk 3 hours and ride 2-3 cars in order to be in class at 9. In the past, he used to pay only 2 shekels or 3 shekels to travel from Hebron to Bethlehem. Now some of our students are paying 20 and 25 shekels because at every checkpoint they have to change the car. And if the checkpoints are closed, the car will go around different roads and they will take the double of the normal price. And I cannot imagine in a situation like this, the employment is almost 45%, 50%, and sometimes 60% in some of the places, and the parents are not working. And if a student needs 20 shekels for transportation only, I don't know how the Palestinian families can survive. If he needs 20 shekels, which is almost $5, and you have the fees, the books, the food, and if a family has 2 or 3 kids going to school, and all what a person can gain per day is $20, imagine the economic difficulties in which many Palestinian families are living nowadays. And when we have a closure, for example, we have now in Bethlehem since 3 days a curfew. And I called my wife, what is the reason for the curfew? She told me, I don't know. We didn't hear anything. Just there's a curfew. And when the president of the university asked the Israeli authorities how long the curfew will be, they said 72 hours, without giving why, an explanation to why there is a curfew. Now, if a curfew or a checkpoint is done in order to secure the Israeli citizens, I think the security of Israeli citizens should end when you transgress the security of others. And you are transgressing the security of civilians, innocent people, students, children. So ask my son, since 3 days I chat with him on the internet. I asked him, have you attended school today? He say no, there's curfew. The school is only a few meters away from our house, but he cannot go because there is a curfew. So these restrictions in general create a lot of difficulties for Palestinians, is making the life of Palestinians as a hell. It was not very strange to see the hostilities of the insurgent to the Americans in the month of April 2004 after the letter of guarantees that was given by President Bush to Ariel Sharon. Many Palestinians viewed these guarantees or this letter as a second Balfour Declaration. It's like a foreign minister of Great Britain, for example, giving part of taxes to China. The final issue status like settlement, refugees, and Jerusalem should be discussed among the Palestinians and the Israelis. And the Israelis, if they want to discuss an issue like the withdrawal from Gaza, they should not come and discuss it with President Bush. They should discuss it with the Palestinians. Because if they withdraw, who will control the situation there? They should talk to the Palestinian Authority, which was created in 1995 after the signature of the Oslo Accords. The Oslo Accord represented the basis for peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And according to these accords, the Palestinian Authority was created. However, these accords, because of their ambiguity and because of the absence of will, sometimes failed. And now there is no peace process. And even when other parties, like the United States, presented the roadmap as an initiative for a peaceful solution to create two states, also the roadmap failed, and it's dead now because the will is not there. And it seems that the situation will continue like this. And in a case like this, when two parties are not able to sit together to discuss ways for a solution, in fact, a third party, a strong third party, who have power and can influence both parties, should come and try to put them together. And probably the United States was the party that was able to do so. However, when President Bush gave this letter of guarantees to Ariel Sharon, he became part of the Israeli side, and he cannot play the role. So he closed by giving this letter of guarantees the opportunities for peace. We were in dire need of a third party, and we were looking always to the United States with hope that it will push the peace process forward. However, what happened lately reflected negatively, and the result that the anger of the not only Palestinians but the anger of Muslims and Arabs in the Middle East influenced the events in Iraq. And you see there more resistance or more insurgents, you can call them as you wish, as a response to this inclination to the Israeli side. And it seems that the United States now is paying the price. And when I was traveling to here, I was listening to the radio, and one of the interviewers was talking about the children in the schools in Gaza. And he said, 20 years ago, we used to ask the students at school, what do you like to become in the future? They say, I like to become a doctor, an engineer, a teacher, a nurse, because Palestinians care too much about education, because they think education is very important, is a weapon, because if they work outside in the Arab world, they have to be too much better than the others in order to get the employment. And as you know, many of them work in the Gulf states, they're filling the hospitals and different companies. But the same interviewer said, I asked the same question to Palestinian kids today who live imprisoned inside the towns and villages, what do you like to become today? He did not say, I would like to become a superstar. He said, I would like to become a suicide bomber. How come they say this? What kind of life is pushing them to say this? So the education, the environment, the atmosphere that is surrounding them is pushing them to think in this way. So I think restrictions on civilians will create more hatred, will create may create more violence, and in order to make peace, we have to use ways of peace, which is negotiation. And we hope that the international community takes its responsibility, because the international community did not take its responsibilities in the case of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, as it did in many other places. We have enough initiatives, peace initiatives. We have enough UN resolutions to solve the problem very quickly. What we don't have is the wish and the ability, and we don't have the help of a third party who can help to create more justice and improve the situation of the Palestinian and help them to build their own state. And I think most of the violence around the world, 80% of the violence that we see around the world, will disappear the moment we solve the core problem, the core conflict in the Middle East, which is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Can one really imagine this war taking place if the principal export of Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait were dates instead of petroleum? I don't think so.
You have the right not to have to interact with an agent of the government. You have the right not to have to answer their questions. Assert those rights, not just for yourself. Assert it and stand up for the people who might be